Chapter 1, An Introduction to Biology. Welcome to Biology, which quite literally means the study of life. We'll be examining a whole host of organisms that you can find anywhere on this bright blue dot in the sky. Biology, as I mentioned, is the study of life. But what is life? As scientists, we've chosen to define a living organism as something that holds true to these 7 properties. Living things have order. From their atoms to their cellular structures, we can study them as they follow the organization of the physical world as we've come to understand it. Living things must be able to reproduce. Not all members of a particular population must reproduce. In fact, some people choose not to have children, but others do, and thus humans fit these 7 categories. Those that are alive must have the capacity to grow and develop, and they have to be able to use energy in some form in order to do that. They must be able to respond to their environment to keep themselves alive, and they have to be able to regulate their internal bodies. Be it how much water they have in their cells, their overall pH balance or temperature, all organisms have a preferred state. Finally, populations of organisms that are considered alive must be able to adapt through evolutionary mechanisms to the world that's changing around them. Having defined what's actually considered alive, we can study all living things in a hierarchical structure. Life can be organized from the smallest unit of matter up through the biosphere, which is our entire planet and a mile or so above its surface. Over the course of this class, we'll examine living creatures at all levels at some point in time. This journey through organization will show us the incredible diversity that exists on our planet. We'll study the 3 major domains of life that separate all organisms into either bacteria, with which you're probably at least mildly familiar, archaea, which seem like they're out of a sci-fi movie, and eukaryotes, which includes basically every living thing you've seen since the day you were born. We'll look at creatures who are short, tall, scary, and even some that are sacred to those who have lived here the longest. We'll move from the smallest on Earth to the largest, first examining microscopic individuals and ending with an attempt to wrap our heads around the massive and the extreme, like the archaea that flourish on thermal vents in our deepest of oceans. Having studied living things for hundreds of years, scientists have started to try and organize it all in a way that's easily understood. This is the best representation of the proliferation of life as we currently see it. Life is placed on branches on a phylogenetic tree, as all living things are related. Thousands of scientists have spent their careers trying to decipher just how we're all tied together over our 4.6 billion year history. If you're curious, you're here. And hopefully by the end of the class, you'll understand a little bit more about how and why you got there. Different branches of science have led us to understand the history of the world to where our future might be going. Paleontologists study fossils and piece together the world as it was. Microbiologists study the planet we cannot see. Botanists study the plant world that keeps all other things alive. Geneticists study the nucleic acid chains that direct every aspect of every living thing on Earth, while astrobiologists study life in hopes of understanding what might be among the stars and how we might get there one day too. How do they go about doing this? They use a process. They use the process of science, and they adhere to the methods of science that include careful observation, record keeping, logical and mathematical reasoning, experimentation, and they submit their conclusions to the scrutiny of others. That process is seen here. We'll begin at the top with an observation about the natural world. Something we see, a problem we face, causes us to formulate a question. Careful thought and consideration leads to the formulation of a hypothesis or a suggested, educated explanation for whatever observation caught our eye. Testable predictions can be formulated to see if our hypothesis is something we might be able to accept as true. With experimentation and data capture, we can redefine, alter, expand, or reject our hypothesis if our original line of thought is proven to be incorrect. If our hypothesis was accepted and our data backed up our original thinking, we might have found a valid explanation. Our results are then published, tested, and vetted by others in the scientific community to ensure there is no error and that our results are repeatable and that we can stand behind them as valid scientific work. You might be wondering, what types of questions count? What do scientists really study? There are a lot of strange articles floating around out there and a lot of weird questions that you could ask. Research tends to fall into two categories. Some scientists do basic research, or research that's referred to as pure. Pure science is learning for the sake of learning and the desire to expand the knowledge for the betterment of mankind. It's driven by curiosity and wonder. Applied research seeks answers for specific questions, solutions for specific problems, cures for specific diseases, or it gives us tangible solutions to real-world issues. Neither type of research is inherently better than the other. They just serve different purposes. They feed into one another in ways we didn't always expect. The Human Genome Project is an excellent example of that. Over a 13-year time span, scientists across the United States worked in a collaborative effort to map every base pair in the human DNA library. Researchers found new ways to read genes, new coding processes, and more information than they ever dreamed of. The whole project started, though, with researchers who were simply studying bacterial genomics for the sake of learning more about our tiny partners in existence. Had the pure researchers not developed the mechanisms that were later used in the Human Genome Project, none of their conclusions would have ever been possible. Maybe during our time together, you'll learn something that sparks your imagination and you'll change the course of science as we know it. So what should you do now? Read the book. It's written for casual reading and you'll find it different than most other textbooks you've read. Take notes and take them in your own words. And last, but obviously not least, take a look at your homework platform. It's interactive and wonderfully engaging. Best of luck to you in this class, and I hope you enjoy the journey as much as I'll enjoy being your guide.